For decades, country fans whispered about shocking secrets, backstage scandals, and rumors so wild they couldn't possibly be true. But in country music, the truth has a way of slipping through the cracks. In this video, we're uncovering 10 old country music rumors that turned out to be shockingly real, the drama Nashville tried to bury, the stories artists hoped you'd forget, and the hidden truths that changed country history forever. 1. Johnny Cash, the addiction rumor that was far darker than fans ever knew. For years, whispers followed Johnny Cash wherever he went. Rumors claiming his addiction was far more destructive than the public ever realized. Fans saw the rebellious outlaw image, but few understood just how deeply pills had taken control of his life. Behind the black attire and thunderous stage presence was a man spiraling into a dangerous dependence, one powerful enough to break marriages, derail tours, and nearly end his career before it truly peaked. At his height, Cash was living on a brutal cycle of amphetamines and barbiturates. Rumors spread across Nashville about shows canceled at the last minute, hotel rooms destroyed in frantic, drug-fueled episodes, and days when he was so disoriented he couldn't remember the lyrics he'd sung thousands of times. Insiders whispered that he carried pills in every pocket, that he swallowed them like breath mints, and that no one around him could control his tempers, mood swings, or long disappearances. Fans believed some of it, but the full truth was far more alarming. The breaking point came in 1965, when Cash's addiction collided with the law. He was arrested at the U.S.-Mexico border with hundreds of pills hidden in his guitar case. It was the moment that confirmed the old rumors. Not only were they true, they had been understated. His marriage to Vivian Liberto collapsed under the weight of the chaos. Tour managers later admitted they traveled with backup plans because they never knew which version of Cash would show up, the focused genius or the man shaking so badly he could barely stand. The myth of the outlaw had become a dangerous reality, and yet the darkest episodes also sparked the turning point of his life. Carter family members and June Carter herself staged interventions that forced Cash to face his demons. He chose to fight back. Withdrawals nearly broke him, but he eventually clawed his way out of the addiction that had nearly destroyed everything: his career, his relationships, and even his life. His later resurgence, from the legendary Folsom Prison concert to his renaissance decades later with producer Rick Rubin, proved that even the most haunting rumors can lead to redemption. Johnny Cash's story remains one of country music's most powerful cautionary tales. The rumors were true, and the truth was almost fatal, too. Tammy Wynette, the kidnapping rumor that never truly added up. For decades, country fans were haunted by one of Nashville's most puzzling mysteries: the night Tammy Wynette claimed she was kidnapped, beaten, and left for dead by a mysterious stranger. The story made national headlines in 1978, and the public rallied around the beloved First Lady of country music. But almost immediately, whispers began circulating, rumors that the details didn't add up, that her injuries didn't match the story, and that those closest to her quietly doubted what really happened. Wynette insisted she was abducted from a Nashville shopping center, driven around for hours, and brutally assaulted before being dumped near her home. The narrative shocked the country world, and newspapers treated it like fact. Yet behind closed doors, industry insiders noted inconsistencies. Police found no witnesses, no security footage, and no physical evidence at the supposed crime scene. Even more unsettling, Tammy gave multiple versions of the story over the years, each one slightly different. Rumors began spreading through the Opry and Music Row that something wasn't right, that the truth might be far more complicated than the public could imagine. The rumor gained momentum when her daughter, Jackie Daly, later wrote that the family never believed the kidnapping happened the way Tammy described. Daly suggested the incident might have been connected to Tammy's troubled marriage to George Ritchie, a man many in Nashville viewed with suspicion and fear. Some insiders speculated that the injuries Tammy suffered could have resulted from domestic abuse rather than a random attacker. No one dared say it out loud for years, but the rumor that the kidnapping story was a cover-up spread quietly and persistently. The speculation intensified when law enforcement admitted they had never found a single lead, no suspect, no motive, no trail. Nashville journalists whispered that detectives privately believed the story had been staged, intentionally or otherwise. Even Tammy's closest friends reportedly struggled to reconcile her public version with private conversations they'd had with her. The rumor that her kidnapping was not entirely truthful, or perhaps not a kidnapping at all, grew stronger as more details emerged. What remains undeniable is that Tammy Wynette lived through immense emotional and physical turmoil during those years. Whether the abduction happened exactly as she said, or whether it masked a darker reality inside her personal life, the old rumor has persisted because so many pieces never fit. In the end, the truth died with her, leaving behind one of country music's most enduring and unsettling mysteries. 3. George Jones, the lawnmower rumor that wasn't just a joke. For years, fans laughed at the legendary story of George Jones riding a lawnmower several miles to buy liquor after his wife hid his car keys. It became a quirky, beloved anecdote, a comedic highlight in the wild mythology of the possum. But the rumor that the lawnmower story was not only true, but a symptom of a far darker reality, turned out to be painfully accurate. Behind the humor was a man battling addiction so severe that even those closest to him feared it would end his life. The incident took place during one of Jones's worst spirals in the late 1960s. His wife at the time, Shirley Ann Corley, had locked up the car to stop him from driving drunk. But Jones, deep in withdrawal and desperate for alcohol, discovered an old riding mower behind the house. Rumor had it that he drove it all the way to the nearest liquor store. And to Nashville's astonishment, the rumor was absolutely real. The episode made headlines, and the public treated it like a hilarious stunt. Yet insiders whispered that the situation was anything but funny. Jones's friends, tour managers, and bandmates later admitted that his dependency on alcohol was so overwhelming that he once crawled on his hands and knees for a drink. Promoters dreaded working with him because he often vanished hours before showtime, hiding in motel rooms or bar bathrooms while chugging whiskey. Rumors spread that Jones sometimes used voice recordings of himself for rehearsals because he was too intoxicated to sing. And incredibly, many of those rumors were verified years later by Jones himself. In the 1970s, the problem escalated with the introduction of cocaine and other drugs into his life. Managers claimed they had to drag him onto stage more than once. Fans would show up to sold-out venues only to be told that the star was too drunk to perform. Nashville whispered that George Jones had become uninsurable, and they were right. By the early 1980s, record executives refused to work with him unless strict monitoring was in place. The lawnmower story was just one chapter in a long, chaotic battle. But the most shocking part of the rumor was this. The lawnmower wasn't the only time he used creative transportation to get alcohol. Friends later confirmed that he once hitched rides with strangers, walked miles barefoot, and even traded personal belongings for liquor. The myth of George Jones's drinking became a symbol of runaway addiction, and the truth behind it was darker, sadder, and far more human than the legend fans laughed at. In the end, Jones fought his demons and delivered a late-career comeback that reminded the world of his unmatched talent. But the lawnmower rumor, far from being a lighthearted joke, revealed just how close country music came to losing one of its greatest voices. 4. Loretta Lynn, the rumor. Nash tried to silence her music. For decades, country traditionalists whispered that Nashville's powerful gatekeepers were working behind the scenes to suppress Loretta Lynn's most controversial songs. Fans heard rumors that radio stations refused to play her records, that executives pressured her to tone down her lyrics, and that the industry quietly punished her for speaking too boldly about women's experiences. It sounded dramatic, even exaggerated. But the shocking truth is that every part of that rumor was real, and far more intense than the public ever saw. From the 1960s onward, Loretta Lynn wrote songs that cut straight into topics considered taboo for the conservative world of country music. Birth control, cheating husbands, domestic violence, and women reclaiming their dignity. Rumor had it that Nashville hated these themes, and they did. When she released The Pill, a song celebrating women's reproductive freedom, several major radio networks outright banned it. DJs were instructed not to play it. Record executives begged her to stop writing songs that might offend the audience. Even the Grand Ole Opry expressed discomfort. Behind closed doors, industry insiders admitted that Loretta was pushing boundaries no woman in country music had ever dared to challenge. Rumors circulated that some radio programmers threatened to blacklist her entirely if she didn't stop. She refused. Instead, she doubled down, writing even sharper songs like Rated X and Don't Come Home a Drinkin'. These weren't just hits. They were bombs dropped on a rigid industry that preferred its women silent. Nashville's resistance grew stronger, and many insiders quietly confirmed that her boldness cost her airplay and awards during certain years. But the rumor most fans never heard was this. It wasn't just the songs they tried to silence. It was Loretta herself. Executives suggested she stop giving outspoken interviews. Some insisted she should stay away from political topics. Others warned her team that she risked being seen as unmanageable. These pressures weren't imaginary. They were documented in interviews with producers, managers, and even Loretta's own memoirs. She was fighting a cultural war inside the industry, and she knew it. Yet the most shocking part of the rumor is how she won. As her banned songs gained underground popularity, fans demanded them on stage. Women wrote letters saying her lyrics reflected their lived experiences. Quietly, her influence began reshaping country music's moral boundaries. She forced Nashville to acknowledge realities it had long ignored, and she did it without apologizing, softening her message, or seeking permission. The truth behind the rumor is simple. Nashville really did try to silence Loretta Lynn, and she became a legend precisely because she refused to let them. 5. Hank Williams, the rumor he was fired from the Opry for more than just drinking. For generations, country fans believed Hank Williams was kicked out of the Grand Ole Opry because of his drinking problem. A rumor so widespread it became accepted as simple fact. But insiders always whispered that the real reason was far more complicated. Nashville knew Hank was a volatile mix of genius and self-destruction. Yet the rumor that his firing involved deeper issues, unreliability, conflicts, even moral concerns, persisted for decades. And when the truth finally emerged, it proved that the rumors had only scratched the surface. In 1952, the Opry announced that Hank Williams was no longer welcome on its stage. Publicly, the explanation was that his alcohol use made him unreliable. But behind the scenes, Opry officials were dealing with a crisis far greater than a few missed shows. Hank's drinking had escalated into a devastating dependency, and the whispers around Nashville painted a picture of a star spiraling out of control. Rumors grew that he sometimes arrived backstage so intoxicated that he couldn't stand. Others claimed he showed up hours late, slurred his speech, or forgot the lyrics to his own songs. All of that was true, but it wasn't the whole story. The deeper rumor, one the Opry never discussed publicly, was that Hank's personal life had become so chaotic that it threatened the Opry's clean, family-friendly image. He was cycling through tumultuous relationships, clashing with band members, and alienating producers who adored his talent but feared his unpredictability. He associated with people considered dangerous influences at the time, further raising red flags. Whisper networks inside the Opry suggested that leadership believed Hank was no longer safe to manage, let alone to place on a live national broadcast. And then came the rumor that everyone in Nashville heard. Hank had been given multiple chances, more than any other performer, and each one had ended in disaster. Opry management reportedly tried late-night interventions, private meetings, and strict performance agreements. When Hank broke those promises, sometimes dramatically, the Opry decided it had no choice. The firing wasn't a punishment. It was a final attempt to protect the institution from the chaos that followed him everywhere. The saddest part of the rumor, which turned out to be true, was that Hank's dismissal pushed him even further into the shadows. Cut off from the Opry, he lost the one stage that had given him structure and identity. His addiction worsened. His physical health deteriorated. Within months, he was gone. A legend lost at just 29 years old. The rumors surrounding his firing were all rooted in truth. It wasn't only the alcohol. It was the tragic collapse of a man consumed by pain, pressure, and fame he was never prepared to handle. Hank Williams wasn't fired for one mistake. He was fired because Nashville was watching a man fall apart and didn't know how to save him. 6. Conway, Twitty, and Loretta Lynn, the rumor of a secret affair that shadowed their careers. For decades, country fans whispered about Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn, two of the most iconic duet partners in country music history. Their chemistry was unmistakable, their harmonies were electric, and their onstage intimacy was so palpable that rumors spread like wildfire. The two weren't just singing about love, they were living it. Nashville insiders insisted there was more to their partnership than friendship, and as the years passed, the rumor only intensified. Shockingly, those who worked closest to them later admitted that parts of the old whispers were true. From the first day they recorded together, Conway and Loretta created a spark that audiences felt instantly. Fans wrote to radio stations and gossip magazines asking if they were secretly involved. Producers claimed they didn't even need to coach the pair. Their natural emotional connection did the work for them. Rumors spread backstage that they held hands during rehearsals, that they spent long hours alone after shows, that Conway knew personal details about Loretta that even her closest friends didn't. Both stars publicly denied any romantic relationship, but their denials did nothing to stop the speculation. The most persistent rumor was that their duet After the Fire Is Gone wasn't just a song, it was a confession. Some musicians swore they had witnessed moments between them that went beyond professional collaboration. Others believed Loretta's turbulent marriage and Conway's complex personal life created a space where the two leaned on each other emotionally. No one dared to accuse them publicly, but off the record, many insiders later admitted that their bond was intense, sometimes too intense. But the most surprising confirmation came years later, not from the stars themselves, but from people who lived closest to their world. Backup musicians, road crew members, and studio engineers revealed that the pair often traveled separately from the rest of the group, sometimes staying late in the studio long after everyone else had gone home. A few even confessed they had been instructed to give them privacy. These testimonies didn't confirm a full affair, but they made it impossible to dismiss the rumor as mere fan fantasy. Yet the truth of the rumor is more nuanced and more human than tabloids ever understood. Conway and Loretta both came from hard, complicated lives. They both knew heartbreak, fame's pressure, and the loneliness of the road. Their partnership became a safe place, a rare relationship where they could be fully themselves. Whether or not they crossed the line romantically, their emotional closeness was real. So real that it threatened their public images, their marriages, and their ability to work in peace. When Conway died in 1993, Loretta was devastated. Her grief was raw, unfiltered, and deeper than what anyone expected from merely a duet partner. In retrospect, many of those old Nashville rumors suddenly felt less like gossip and more like pieces of a truth the public was never meant to know. 7. Reba McEntire, the rumor she was forced to change her image to stay in the industry. For years, country insiders quietly repeated a rumor about Reba McEntire, that early in her career, Nashville executives tried to reshape her image, her sound, and even her personality to fit the commercial mold they thought would sell. Fans believed Reba rose naturally on her own terms, but those who witnessed her early years whispered that she fought a silent battle behind closed doors. Shockingly, the rumor turned out to be true, and the full story revealed just how intense the pressure was for a young female artist trying to survive in a male-controlled industry. When Reba first entered the country scene in the late 1970s, she embodied a clean-cut, traditional image. But behind the scenes, record labels insisted that she stick to soft, safe material, songs that wouldn't intimidate male listeners. Rumor had it that executives discouraged her from recording more powerful ballads or exploring a more energetic vocal style. They wanted her to blend in, not stand out. According to former label staff, Reba was told she needed to dress a certain way, speak a certain way, and avoid making artistic decisions on her own. At the time, these whispers sounded like jealous exaggerations, but Reba herself later confirmed much of it. The real turning point, the rumor that proved everything, happened in the mid-1980s when her label pushed her toward pop country arrangements she didn't believe in. Producers layered her vocals with heavy studio polish. They softened her natural edge. Her own band members recalled watching her grow more frustrated each year. Rumors spread that Reba argued in private meetings, begging for more creative control, only to be dismissed repeatedly. Nashville wasn't ready to let a young woman dictate her sound. Then came the moment that exposed the truth. Reba fired almost her entire team, left behind the producers who had controlled her early work, and rebuilt her music from the ground up. This bold move shocked the industry. Many insiders at the time admitted it validated the long-standing rumor. She had been fighting a system that refused to let her grow. Her 1984 album, My Kind of Country, marked the first time she finally broke free, returning to a raw, more traditional sound that reflected her true identity. The record was a massive success and proved that her instincts had been right all along. But the rumor didn't end there. Even after she became a superstar, some executives still tried to influence her wardrobe, her interviews, and her public persona. Industry veterans confirmed that Reba's rise was not as effortless as fans imagined. It was a war for autonomy. She fought for every creative right she eventually earned, and she won because she refused to let Nashville shape her into someone she wasn't. The shocking truth behind the rumor is simple. Reba McEntire didn't just break country music barriers. She fought through an entire industry determined to control her and came out stronger than ever. 8. Waylon Jennings. The rumor he was nearly arrested by the FBI. For decades, fans whispered about one of the wildest rumors in outlaw country history, that Waylon Jennings had a run-in with the FBI so serious it nearly ended his career overnight. It sounded like the kind of exaggerated tale fans pass around to boost a legend's aura, but in Waylon's case, the rumor was shockingly, undeniably true. And the real story behind it was even more intense than the myth Nashville whispered about. By the late 1970s, Waylon Jennings was at the peak of his fame and the peak of his drug use. Cocaine had become a constant presence in his life and on his tours. Insiders claimed he kept it in briefcases, guitar cases, and even hollowed-out equipment. Crew members warned newcomers never to open certain bags. Bandmates said his habit was so severe he rarely ate or slept. It was during this dangerous chapter that the rumor began. Federal agents had intercepted a suspicious package addressed to Waylon, and inside was cocaine. The rumor only grew louder when word spread that the DEA and FBI had stormed his Nashville studio. For years, fans treated it like a half-true legend, but the truth was far more dramatic. In 1977, federal agents really did burst into the studio, armed with warrants and prepared to arrest him on the spot. Waylon was in the middle of recording when agents confronted him, demanding the package and threatening immediate charges. The studio went silent, musicians froze, and Waylon realized his entire career was on the brink of collapse. The rumor that Waylon talked his way out of the arrest also turned out to be shockingly accurate. As agents searched the room, Waylon stayed unusually calm. Some said too calm, a sign of how accustomed he had become to danger. Thanks to a technicality involving who legally signed for the package, agents couldn't prove that Waylon had personally accepted the drugs. In the confusion, his sound engineer quietly disposed of evidence while the agents were distracted. By the time they realized what had happened, the cocaine had vanished. The arrest fell apart. But the encounter left Waylon rattled. Those close to him later admitted that the FBI raid was the closest he ever came to losing his freedom. It forced him to confront just how deeply drugs had consumed his life. The rumor that the incident changed him forever wasn't just gossip. It was true. For the first time, Waylon understood that addiction wasn't just hurting his music. It was threatening the very outlaw spirit he had built his identity on. Although he didn't get sober until years later, the FBI raid became a turning point. The moment the myth of Waylon Jennings collided with the brutal consequences of his lifestyle. The rumor wasn't just true. It was a warning shot that nearly redefined the legacy of one of country music's greatest rebels. 9. Dolly Parton. The rumor her feud with Porter Wagoner was far more explosive than fans ever knew. For decades, fans adored the on-screen chemistry between Dolly Parton and Porter Wagoner. Their partnership defined an era of country television, and viewers believed they were the perfect professional duo. But behind the bright smiles and rhinestones, Nashville insiders whispered a different story. A rumor that the tension between them was so explosive, so emotional, and so deeply personal that it nearly destroyed both their careers. As time passed, the old rumor proved to be shockingly true, revealing a feud far more intense than the public ever imagined. When Dolly joined the Porter Wagoner show in 1967, she was young, ambitious, and eager to make her mark. Porter, already a star, became her mentor, guiding her career, shaping her stage presence, and pushing her into national fame. But as her talent grew, so did her independence. Rumors spread that Porter began to feel threatened, fearing Dolly would overshadow him. Crew members later confirmed heated arguments backstage, some of them so loud they could be heard through studio walls. The public never saw these moments, but industry insiders witnessed the pair clash constantly over songs, contract terms, and creative control. The most persistent rumor centered on Porter's jealousy. Some musicians swore he monitored which producers Dolly spoke to, what songs she wanted to record, and even who she socialized with. As Dolly's fame skyrocketed, Porter reportedly struggled with losing influence over her career. The show became a battleground. Dolly fighting for autonomy, Porter fighting to keep her under his wing. The tension reached a breaking point in 1974, when Dolly decided she had to leave the show. The rumor that Porter didn't take it well turned out to be an understatement. Their breakup was so emotionally charged that Dolly wrote, "I Will Always Love You" as a farewell, a song born not from romance, but from heartbreak and conflict. But the feud didn't end there. Porter sued Dolly for breach of contract, demanding compensation for her departure. The lawsuit confirmed what Nashville had whispered for years. The partnership had deteriorated beyond repair. It was one of the most bitter, complicated splits in country music history, and the legal battle publicly revealed just how deep the resentment ran. Yet the rumor with the most surprising twist was this. Despite years of anger and distance, Dolly and Porter eventually found their way back to forgiveness. In Porter's final years, Dolly visited him often, supporting him emotionally and financially. Nurses later shared that Dolly was one of the last people he asked for during his final days. She paid for his funeral and delivered a tribute that stunned those who remembered their feud. The love in "I Will Always Love You" had never vanished. It had simply been buried under years of hurt. The truth behind the rumor wasn't about scandal. It was about two powerful personalities, bound by music, torn apart by ambition, and ultimately reunited by the affection that made them legends. 10. Willie Nelson. The rumor his massive IRS debt was even worse than the headlines claimed. For years, fans repeated a rumor about Willie Nelson that sounded too outrageous to be true. That his tax problems were so catastrophic, so overwhelming, that the IRS had essentially stripped him of nearly everything he owned, and that the real numbers behind his debt were far higher than what the government publicly reported. As time passed and more documents surfaced, the country world realized the shocking truth. The rumor was not only real, it was understated. Willie Nelson's IRS crisis was one of the most devastating financial collapses in music history. The story exploded in 1990 when the IRS seized most of Willie's assets: homes, ranches, recording masters, musical equipment, and even personal belongings. Newspapers reported he owed $16.7 million in back taxes, a figure already staggering. But insiders whispered something far worse: that penalties, interest, and years of mismanagement had inflated his debt far beyond anything the public was told. Financial investigators and former advisors later confirmed the rumor. The true number was closer to $32 million, an impossible sum for any musician to pay. The shock didn't end there. Rumor had it that Willie wasn't even aware of how bad things had become until it was too late. He had trusted financial managers who invested poorly, misfiled documents, and allowed his tax problems to spiral out of control. When the IRS finally stepped in, they discovered years of unpaid liabilities. Some of Willie's closest friends admitted he was blindsided, learning only afterward that his fortune had been mismanaged beyond repair. The rumor that the IRS held nothing back during the seizure also proved to be true. Agents took everything they legally could, down to gold records hanging on studio walls. But the most unbelievable rumor, one fans thought was exaggerated, was that Willie recorded an entire album solely to pay off the IRS. It was completely true. The album, The IRS Tapes, Who Will Buy My Memories, was created as a desperate last-ditch effort to chip away at the debt. Even more astonishing, fans across the country held auctions and fundraisers to buy back Willie's possessions so they could return them to him. It was the kind of grassroots loyalty no other artist could inspire. Yet the darkest part of the rumor was this. Willie came dangerously close to losing his career entirely. With no property, no financial stability, and a debt larger than any artist had ever faced, he was forced to rebuild from nothing. Industry insiders later confirmed that some labels refused to work with him during this time, considering him too risky. Nashville whispered that his era was over, that he would never recover. They were wrong. Willie Nelson turned one of the worst tax disasters in American music history into a comeback rooted in grit, humility, and relentless touring. He paid off the debt, reclaimed his life, and emerged stronger than ever, proving the old rumor true, but showing the world that even the darkest chapter couldn't break him.